All right, so this whole week we are learning about factoring, and there are lots of different ways to factor. There are some shortcuts for certain types of problems. There's factoring at the greatest common factor, and then there's factoring using the AC method, and we're going to be going over trial and error. This is also known as guess and check, and this is used only in specific situations. So every type of factoring you're learning about this week, there's a time and a place to use each of them. So first off, what exactly is factoring? So first, let's look at the word factor. So a factor is a number or quantity, so it's a thing, a mathematical thing, that when it's multiplied with another, produces a given number or expression. This makes more sense if you see an example. 2 and 3 are factors of 6. You multiply those together and they get you 6. So numbers that can divide into something else is basically a factor of that number. Factoring is basically where we're going to be writing things as multiplication. We're going to be writing factors multiplied together. Essentially, this is reversing the distributive property and reversing the FOIL process. So last week you learned about multiplying polynomials, and FOIL was one of those ways that you learned to multiply. Factoring is undoing FOIL. That's essentially what we're doing here. It's a really, really important skill. We use it quite a bit. So when you factor by trial and error, you factor specifically a trinomial, 3 terms. Generally, we factor it when it has an exponent of 2, so it's in this form, x squared plus some number times x plus another number. So this is the form that we can generally do trial and error on. This is the form that I will do trial and error on when I'm factoring. So when it's in this form and we factor, we get a result of x plus a number times x plus a number. Or sometimes there's a minus sign, but that's the general form because that's what it looks like before you go through FOIL. And whether you get pluses or minuses depends on the signs of B and C. The key to this is really knowing your multiplication tables. If you don't really know your multiplication tables, trial and error can take a very long time. So if you know your multiplication tables well, it can be very quick and you can do it in like one step. So there are 4 different ways that you can have your plus and minus signs for something of this form. So if you have all plus signs, then you're going to have all plus signs in your result, in your factored form. If you have a negative sign in the middle, so I'm looking at this right here, and then it has a plus sign here, you're going to have both negatives. If you've got a negative here, it doesn't matter what this is here, but if you've got a negative here, one of them is going to be positive and one is going to be negative. So you're going to have opposite signs. And then determining which one is positive and which one negative is based off of the sign here. Where the biggest, you're going to have 2 numbers here, the biggest one gets the sign based off of this. So that eliminates some of the guessing and checking, because a lot of the guessing and checking or trial and error is knowing, is this a positive or a negative number? This little box here eliminates some of that for you because then it determines your signs already. So it's a little bit less that you need to do, but you still have to do some guess and check. So the best way to do this is just with practice and just to demonstrate it, because there's no formula. It's literally guessing and checking. So if it says factor and you have something in this form, so we've got y squared plus 18y plus 80. First thing you do is set up your result. So in this case, we've got the letter Y. So it's going to look like this. Because these are both positive, I know that I'm going to have plus signs here. So that comes from the first line in this table, x squared plus bx plus c. So everything's positive. And I have to fill in two numbers in these areas. So P and Q, basically. I'm finding out what are these two numbers to go in these spots. So because we're reversing FOIL, you need to think about what happens when you FOIL. So when you go through the FOIL process, these two numbers, those multiply to the last number. So we're basically looking for two numbers that multiply to 80. So we need two numbers that multiply to 80. Now there are lots of numbers that multiply to 80, lots of pairs of numbers. So I could write them all down. I could do 1 times 80. I could do 2 times 40. I don't think 3. You take your calculator out and then you're trying to find all the numbers that go into 80. So 4 times 20. 5 times 16. And I'm getting these numbers by taking 80 divided by 5, that gives me 16. So then if I would try 80 divided by 6, I get a decimal, so I don't write it down. 80 divided by 7 gives me a decimal. But 80 divided by 8 gives me a whole number, so that's 8. And then that result is 10. And then I try 80 divided by 9, decimal, and then my next number would be 80 divided by 10, but that's already on the list. So you're basically taking your calculator and you're doing division to find every number that divides into that thing, and then you write them in pairs because the pair has to multiply to 80. So we have 5 pairs to choose from here. Now, to know which of these pairs we need, we have to look at the inside. So FOIL, we've got the inside and the outside parts of FOIL. The combination of those two needs to add to 18. Those create this number right here. So we need these to add to 18. And so you go through your list and you see which pair here adds to 18. And so that is your last pair here. 8 plus 10 gives me 18. So the trial and error part here, or the guess and check, is essentially going through pairs and numbers, trying to find what all of your possible choices are. And then you want the pair that when you do FOIL, it creates the same thing you started with. So our two numbers in this case are 8 and 10. And it doesn't matter where you put them. I could put 10 first and then I could put 8, or I could put 8 first and then 10. It doesn't matter because they're both positive. So once you've decided, once you've found your two numbers that multiply to 80 and then add to 18, you put them in the two spots and that's your answer. So our answer is y plus 8 times y plus 10. So let me do the second example on the right, so you can see a second demonstration of this, and then I'll ask questions for questions. So we've got y squared plus 18y plus 81. So I still set it up. My variable is y. They're both plus signs in there, so I've still got plus. In this case, we need to multiply to 81. So we need to multiply to 81. So I need to go through all of my numbers that multiply to 81. So 1 times 81. And then I just go through the calculator. 81 divided by 2 is a decimal, so you don't write it down. 81 divided by 3. So that gives me 3, and that result was 27. 81 divided by 4. I get a decimal, I don't write it down. 81 divided by 5. Get a decimal, I don't write it down. 81 divided by 6. Decimal. You keep going through. We got 81 divided by 9. And that is 9 times 9. And you just kind of keep going until you keep repeating. So 10 doesn't work. You try 11. 81 divided by 12. No, 81 divided by 13. 81 divided by 14. 81 divided by 15. 81 divided by 16. And you keep going until you kind of start circling back around your list. In this case, there's only 3 choices that multiply to 81. So if you try anything else, it's not going to work. So once you've written down all of your choices, then we need to worry about the middle number. It needs to add to 18. Just like the one on the left, we needed to add to 18. So the only pair that adds to 18 is 9 and 9. You add those together, that gives you 18. So your 2 numbers are identical in this case. They're both 9s. So you're looking for 2 numbers that multiply to the last number and add to the middle. Now, what makes this trial and error as far as the way that the book shows it is that the book wants you to plug in every choice, FOIL, see if it works. If it doesn't work, plug in the next pair of numbers, FOIL, see if it works, doesn't work, move on. That's a lot of time. So you don't have to plug in every possibility. You're just trying to make sure that they follow the rules, that they multiply to the last number and add to the inside number. And then that gives you your 2 numbers. And then you kind of put them where they belong. Now, I said that if you know your multiplication, you can do this really quickly, because for this last one, if I know that I have to have 2 numbers to add to 81, or that multiply to 81 and add to 18, I say, oh, well, 9 times 9 multiplies to 81. 9 plus 9 is 18. And I don't have to write down my choices. I don't have to spend all that time. Like the first example, if I'm just thinking what are 2 numbers that multiply to 80 and add to 18, my first thought is 8 and 10. Those multiply to 80, those add to 18. So if you know your multiplication tables, you don't even need to write down every possible combination of numbers, because you just think about your times tables, add your choices, and then you know the pair that you stick in. There are questions on either of these 2 examples. Okay, so I'm going to actually write down here. These were of the form x squared plus bx plus c, which factors to x plus p, x plus q. So those are both plus signs. These next ones are not of that form. These are of the form x squared minus bx plus c. And these factor to, both minus signs, x minus p, x minus q. So both of these are going to factor to have negative signs. And this is because the way that the factoring works, so I'm going to set this up. We're reversing FOIL. So in this case, my variable is w. My two numbers that I'm going here, they need to multiply to +4. So they're multiplying to a positive, but they have to add to a negative. And the only way that is possible is if they're both negative. Because two negatives multiply to a positive, but a negative plus a negative is a negative. So both of these have to be negative numbers. So we are multiplying to 4. And we are adding to -4 here. And we know that we're going to have two negative numbers. So the way that I do this is first I write down all the combination of numbers that multiply to 4. 1 times 4 and 2 times 2. There's not a lot there. But I know that they both have to be negative, so I'm just going to put negative signs in front of them. And then I look at those and I say, okay, which pair adds to -2? So that's the -2 plus -2. Those give me -4. Well, so far, every example I've done, it's been the last pair. That's not always the case. It just happens to be what I've been doing so far, the way that I write them out. It doesn't always come out this way. But in this case, so -2 and -2, those add to -4. So I need to write my negatives all again because I already have my minus signs there. So I just have to write the actual numbers so that I've got a w minus 2 and a w minus 2. Now the one on the right, I'm going to set it up. And you might want to kind of test yourself as you're looking at this, is that we want two numbers that multiply to 12, and they need to add to -7. So if you know your times tables and you happen to know the pair, go ahead and type that in the chat. Two numbers that multiply to 12 and add to -7. Now, if you can't think of something immediately, you can start going through your possibilities. So Brett says 4 and 3, and that is correct. So those two numbers get you 12, and they'll add to 4. And I'll write down all of our choices here. So we've got 1 times 12, 2 times 6, 3 times 4. And we know they all have to be negative. And just happen to be just the way that I write these down. The -3 and the -4, those give you -7. So you've got two numbers that multiply to 12, 3 times 4, and they get you 7. So all I have to do is write in those numbers. So at this point, you may be thinking, well, this is not so bad. All it is multiplication and addition. That's not bad at all. And this is true. This is why these are the types of problems that I use the trial and error method on, because they don't really require any work. You don't even really need to write anything down because you can do it completely in your head as long as you really know your math. We will get to some examples where I don't like to use this method because it's too complicated, but ones in this form, it's actually pretty simple. Are there any questions? Okay. Now, these are different forms. So we've got opposite signs here. We've got on the left a plus and a negative, and then on the right we have a negative and a negative. So these are falling into the camp, the last two here, where if C, the last number, is negative, we have to kind of, there's more thinking involved. So because they're going to have opposite signs when we set it up. So I will start with the one on the left. We've got W, whoops, this is not how it gets set up. W as our variable, and then we're going to have two signs, a positive and a negative. So these are of the form x squared plus bx minus c and x squared minus bx minus c. And these all get set up as x plus x minus, and then two numbers. It's just a matter of which number goes where, because now they're not the same sign. But the basic rules are still applying. So here we're multiplying to a negative 12. And we are adding to 4. So we've got the same choices. We're multiplying to 12 essentially, like we did in the last problem, but we're adding to a different number. So 3 and 4 isn't going to work because those don't add to 4. So we're going to have a different combination of numbers. So my choices that multiply to 12 are the same choices that I had before. But we're multiplying to a negative. So one of these pairs of numbers has to be negative. Am I going to have a negative 1 or a negative 12? Am I going to have a negative 2 or a negative 6? Negative 3 or negative 4? The rule is that the bigger of the two numbers in the pair is the same sign as the middle term. So our middle is positive, so the bigger of the pair is going to be positive, which means the smaller number is going to be negative. So that's kind of why I write these this way. So because our middle term's positive, the bigger of the two pairs is going to get the plus, the other one's going to get the minus. So now you're looking at these and you're saying, okay, which one gives us 4 when we add these together? And in this case, it's negative 2 plus 6. So when you add those together, those give you 4. So now I can't just put them in as 2 and 6. I have to make sure my signs match. So I have a negative 2, so I actually have to put the 2 with my minus sign. And then I have a 6, so I have to put the 6 with the plus sign. So the order that you write the numbers matters here because the signs are different. I can't just put them anywhere I want. I have to make sure they have the correct sign so that they result in the correct number. Now, if we look at the example on the right, I've got a squared minus 10a minus 24. So I'm going to set this up with the variable a. And again, because they're multiplying to a negative, I've got an opposite signs here. So in this case, we're multiplying to negative 24. And we are adding to negative 10. So, you know, I look at this and I'm like, oh, 6 times 4 is 24. 6 plus 4 is 10. But I have to have opposite signs. So sometimes the first thing you think of doesn't necessarily work. So let me write down all of our choices. You have to kind of really, this is where you really have to do some thinking in your head. So we've got 1 times 24, 2 times 12, 3 times 8, 4 times 6, 5 doesn't go into it, and then I would be back at 6. So The bigger number gets the sign of the term. In this case, the middle term is a negative, so the bigger number is going to be negative. So I'm going to put all of those as being negative signs, which makes the other one going to be positive. And now I'm looking for the pair that will give me negative 10. So when you go through, like our first thought, well, 4 plus 6 gives me 10, but because of the signs, it would be 4 minus 6 that gives me negative 2. That's not actually the pair, even though that's the first set of numbers I thought of. The correct set is 2 and negative 12, because we have to make sure we have the signs right. 2 minus 12 gives you negative 10. So I have to make sure that the minus sign goes with 12, and then the positive goes with 2. And that will give me my pair of numbers here. So you can kind of see why knowing your times tables and then being able to add pretty quickly mentally can really make this quick. Because if you can think of the pair, right away, you don't have to even write anything down. Are there any questions so far? You can always double check yourself by FOIL. So you can go through the FOIL process to check and make sure that you've got it set up correctly. So there's no reason that you would be like, well, I don't know if I have this right, because you can always multiply it out and then see, did you get the same thing that you started with? So these are the easy type of problems. These are the ones that I use trial and error on, because I'm really only looking for a combination for two numbers that add to something else. These are the type of problem here that I don't like to use trial and error on, because it's very complicated. So these are where you have a number in front of the x squared term. So once you have a number in front of there, you now have multiple numbers that you have to consider, because you have multiple numbers that multiply to A, multiple numbers that multiply to C, and then the combination of the two have to add up to B. So you've got a lot more things that you have to consider, and there are a lot more choices to put in. Basically, you've got 4 numbers you're looking for now. You've got your P and Q, but now you also have R and S, and they have to combine in such a way that R times S is A, P times Q is C, and then the combination P times S plus Q times R gives you B. So I don't like using trial and error on these types of problems. I actually prefer the AC method for these types of problems. And that's why you're also taught the AC method. But we're going to do trial and error on these so you can see what the process is like. And this is where you truly are kind of guessing and checking. And pencil is necessary for this. So first here is how I set it up. I've got 3n squared plus 13n plus 4. I have a number in front of each of the n's in this case. So I have to kind of leave a blank there. Now, these are still both positive, so these are all going to be positive. So I've got 4 spots here that I'm plugging numbers into. So first, we've got the numbers that multiply to 4. So we need to multiply to 4. So I'm going to write down those numbers. 1 times 4, 2 times 2. I also need to multiply to 3. So I'm going to write down those numbers. In this case, only 1 times 3. So at least I don't have a lot of choices there. And then I need these to add to 13. I'm going to actually kind of write this down here. Add to 13. There is no way that I can kind of just look at this pair of numbers and kind of say, okay, I know, which of the two pairs to pick. I've got lots of choices here. You've got 2 choices for 4, 1 choice for 3, and then you can also, the order of these also matters. So you basically have 2 choices times 1 choice, and then you can also do it in the other direction. So you got to double your choices. So we've got 4 different kind of combinations that we're testing here. So start with the first number, which is my orange that I have here. I have only 1 choice of numbers, so that's really nice. It's going to have to be 1 and 3. In this case, it doesn't matter if it's 3 and 1 or 1 and 3. I'm just going to pick one. So once I pick that, then I need to start plugging in numbers into here. So I'm just plugging in my first set, 1 and 4. And now you're going to go through FOIL and see if it works. So I'm actually running out of, I should have put these further down because I want to show FOIL here. So I'll actually do my orange first. So we're going to multiply to 3, which is 1 times 3. And then we've got multiply to 4. And our choices were 1 times 4, 2 times 2. And now I need the combination of the inside and the outside to add to 13. So when I multiply the inside, I have 3n. When I multiply the outside, I have 4n. You add these together, we get 7n. So that's not the correct combination. So that's the wrong combination. So what you do is you flip the numbers. So we'll change the order. 4 times 3 is 12. 1 times 1 is 1. 12 plus 1 is 13. Once you get the correct pair, then you're done. So this is where you're doing trial and error because you're plugging in numbers, you're multiplying them, seeing if it adds to the right set, and then if it doesn't, you reverse them and you try again. So we got the correct combination here, 12n plus 1n, that gives us our 13n. So this is our answer. Our answer is n plus 4 times 3n plus 1. Let's do the second one here. I've got 2w squared plus 5w minus 3. Whoops. I've got a w and a w. Now, these are multiplying to a negative, adding a positive. These are going to have opposite signs. And so I need to plug in, I have to do multiple things here. So if we look at the first number, we need to multiply to 2. The only possible combination is 1 times 2. So I'm going to just put those in. Our last number we need to multiply to 3. So our only combination is 1 times 3. And now I'm going to try the inside and the outside because I need them to add to 5. So Inside 1 times 2, I have 2w. Outside 1 times 3, that's a negative 3w. 2 minus 3, we get a negative 1w. So that is the wrong set, the wrong pair. This does not work. So we change the order. I reverse the 3 and the 1, and then I try again. 3 times 2w gives me 6w. 1w times negative 1, that's a minus 1w. 6 minus 1 is 5. That's what we wanted. We wanted a positive 5. So now I have found the correct combination. So our answer is w plus 3 times 2w minus 1. So you're basically picking your choices, plugging them in, doing FOIL to see if it works. If it doesn't work, you try to reverse it and hope it works. And then if that doesn't work, you try another pair. Are there any questions on either of these two examples? Okay. Here are a couple more. We've got 2y squared minus 3y minus 2. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do a different one because all of these only have one combination for the first number. So I'm going to just make up something else. Let's do 4y squared minus, and then let's say minus 12. Let's go minus 22y. Okay. So let's say we have this instead of the one that I originally had. So we've got some larger numbers here. So I'm going to set up my parentheses. I'm going to have something times y. And these are multiplying to a negative, which means they have to have positive signs, a plus and a minus. Or have opposite signs. I think I said positive. Opposite signs, a plus and a minus. So our first set of numbers has to multiply to 4. So that's 1 times 4 and 2 times 2. The second set of numbers needs to multiply to 12. So we've got 1 times 12, 2 times 6, 3 times 4. So we have to pick multiple choices. So we need to pick one of the pairs out of the multiply to 4, and then we need to pick one of the pairs out of the multiply to 12. So I usually just always pick the first pair, 1 times 4. But you don't, it doesn't matter. Like if you want, we could say, well, let's try the 2 times 2 first. Now, it really doesn't matter which of your choices you pick, as long as you just pick a choice. And then let's say, let's just work backwards this time around, just for kicks. Let's say you pick the 3 and the 4 choices. So we're multiplying the inside and the outside. So the inside gives us 3 times 2, so that's 6y. Outside, 2 minus 4, so that's minus 8y. You add those, 6 minus 8, that gives you negative 2y. we are looking for a negative 22y. So that is not the right combination. That's pretty far away. So you switch the numbers. So let's make this a 4 and then a 3. So 4 times 2 is 8. 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. 8 minus 6 is 2y. So again, not negative 22. We got the same number, just an opposite sign from before. So that pair doesn't work. So then you go to the next pair. Let's try 2 and 6. 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times negative 6 is negative 12. 4 minus 12 is negative 8. We want negative 22, so that's not going to work. So you try switching them. 6 and 2. 6 times 2 is 12. 2 times negative 2 is minus 4. 12 minus 4 is 8. We're looking for negative 2, so that's not the right combination. You can see why you have to do this in pencil. So now let's try the 1 times 12. So 1 times 2 is 2. 2 times 12, negative 24. 2 times 12, negative 24. 2 minus 24 is negative 22. So we found the correct combination. 2 minus 24, negative 22. We were looking for negative 22. So we had to go through multiple combinations here. Now, if I had started with the 1 times 4 over here, we would have had to even go through even more combinations. So 2 plus 1 times 2y minus 12. Are there any questions on that example? Okay, so let's do the one on the right. We've got 7x squared minus 18x plus 18. So I'm going to have something times x, something times x. I'm multiplying to a positive, adding to a negative, so both numbers have to be a minus. First number is 7, so I'm multiplying to 7. Luckily, there's only one pair of numbers 1 times 7. So I'm going to put those in. The last number is 8, so we're going to multiply to 8. So we've got 1 times 8 and 2 times 4. And now I'm just going to start plugging in numbers and then seeing if it works. We're trying to get to negative 18 here. So I've got a negative 1 times 7, so that's negative 7x. 1 times negative 8, so that's a negative 8x. Negative 7 plus negative 8 is negative 15x. We want a negative 18x. That doesn't get us 18. So you try to switch the order of the numbers, 8 and 1. So negative 8 times 7, oh, I'm really bad at this. It's negative 56. 1 times negative 1 is negative 1. That gets you a negative 57. That's way far away. So That doesn't work. So you erase it, and then you move to the next combination, 2 times 4. So negative 2 times 7 is negative 14. 1 times negative 4 is negative 4. Negative 14 minus 4, we get negative 18. And that's our goal. That's what we wanted. So that's our final combination. So you're basically, you're writing down all of your choices, and then you keep plugging in numbers, multiply it out, see if it works. And all of the ones that I did here aren't too bad. We didn't have to do too many trial and errors. We only really had to do 3 at the most before we got the right combination. But sometimes you'll get sets of numbers that are really large, so they'll have lots of choices. And you can spend a long time trying to find the right combination of numbers to work. And that's why I don't like using trial and error on these types of problems. If the numbers are small, like if my first number and my last, well, if my first number is under 10, if it's a prime number, so there's only one choice, and the last number is pretty small, I might do trial and error. But if my first number was something like 18 and my last number was something like 56, there are a lot of choices that you would have to go through in order to factor. And I would not want to use this method because it would take a long time. But this is essentially what trial and error is that you're plugging in numbers and then you're seeing, do they multiply to the correct combination? We didn't really have to do the multiplication part in this step because the y's, they're all the number 1. So you'd just be multiplying times 1. So like on the example on the left, I would have 8 times 1 and 10 times 1. So that's just 8 plus 10. So it doesn't really matter. That's why we didn't really do the FOIL part, because it's not really necessary because you're just multiplying it by 1. But if you look at numbers like this, you're now multiplying it by a number that's not 1. And so you do have to do that multiplication and then see if it works. Are there any questions? All right, well, that was all I had on the trial and error factor, or factoring by trial and error. I already have a video in the class, which is on factoring by the AC method. And the AC method works in these situations. It works all the time. So some people prefer to always do that method and not ever do trial and error. I definitely recommend that you watch that video so that you can see how that works, and then you can choose the method that works best for you, because both methods work. It's a matter of which one is easiest for you. You make the fewest mistakes, maybe which one's faster, and then that's the method that you should do. So if you guys don't have any other questions, we'll give you a last chance. Any questions? All right. Well, I'll let you guys go. Thank you for attending. And I'll see you guys next week. So you guys have a great rest of your night. Bye.